So the last one, which kind of it kind of makes sense to me to end with affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
So explain to us, to me, and all of us, what was your intention here and the goal in this lesson, and how does this affect the work of ministry to have affirmation?
People need to know that they are doing something and that they're important. Okay? The way Paul, I believe, was inspired to write to the Corinthians in the first epistle, or the first one that we have in 1 Corinthians, he wanted to make sure they understood that there was no schism in the body. And he says in verse 23 of chapter 12, "And those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor." Think about that verse. On those members of the body, those people in the church who we think to be less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor. And he goes on to explain that a little bit. "And our unpresentable parts have greater modesty, but our presentable parts have no need. But God composed the body, having given greater honor to the part which, I would say, seems to lack it, that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it." He was affirming those who seem to go unnoticed, I think, in the church. That's just my opinion.
Right.
But nonetheless, that concept is there, and we can apply that. We need to affirm people. Jesus was affirmed by his Father.
Right.
"This is my beloved Son. I love you," in other words, he was saying. "In whom I'm well pleased." In other words, he was saying, this is my Son who I love, and he's good. I'm pleased with what he does.
Right.
Hear him. In other words, he's really good. You need to hear him. He's that good. He was affirming his Son, Jesus Christ. And that's God's message to us as well. You are my beloved. I paid the price to make you my beloved.
Right.
You have a call and a gift, and people need to hear that. So God affirms us, and we need to be affirming to one another. We are sons and daughters of him. He makes that very clear in this love letter to his sons and daughters. You're mine. There's honor in that. He bestowed honor on us. Therefore, we ought to bestow greater honor on one another. You know, if you want to love God with all your heart, you can start by loving his creature, his son, his daughter. That's a good way to show that you love God. And affirmation plays a role in showing that love. You affirm somebody, you set them up for success in their calling to the ministry. When you critique too much, there's a difference between constructive criticism and just criticism. When you critique, they shrink back. People have a tendency to not want to continue on. We need to be affirming first before we'll challenge or try to help somebody get better in a certain area.
Right.
You know, and affirmation, when we're affirming one another, helps us do the work of the ministry because there's a confidence that's built. There's a strong tie and a bond that's built between people who affirm one another.
Right.
As co-workers with God, think about that affirmation alone. He calls us co-workers.
Wow.
So he doesn't need us.
Right.
He wants us.
Right.
He invites us to be a part of it. There's honor bestowed on us. You mean we get to work with the creator of the universe? And his word is, yes, you do. Right there. We can take a lesson from that to be affirmers, so to speak. Perhaps made up a word there, but it's fitting. That's how the English language was developed anyway. We just made up words and borrowed from other languages. So you definitely want to affirm one another.
Affirmers. Good, good. So are there some ideas, some practical ideas of how the church can affirm people to, I don't know if you've heard this saying before, encouragement will sweeten labor sometimes.
Well,
is there some practical ways of doing that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, be encouragers. I said some of that a minute ago. We need to realize that people are loved, they're appreciated, their works do not go unnoticed. We recognize what they contribute. They need to hear that come out of our mouths. Don't take for granted anything, and don't go too long of a period without affirming somebody and encouraging them. That's one way. I think another way is public recognition. Don't just tell them to their face, but tell others how good they're doing. You know, I think that has an impact on people. It gets into their mind and their psyche, and changes even their body posture. When you affirm people, you're confirming something about them. You're confirming that they're good, just like God did with Christ. He was trying to show in the Transfiguration, he was trying to show Peter that Jesus was superior to Elijah and Moses. You know, they wanted to build 3 tabernacles. And what God was basically saying was, this is my son, hear him. He's superior, he's better. Perhaps you don't need 3 tabernacles because Jesus is superior. All you need is Christ. Right. Not that Moses and Elijah don't have anything to contribute. They're great. They're prophets of God. They were men of God. They were anointed. But Jesus was needing to hear affirmation. And he was confirmed as the Son of God, the Messiah, promised in the prophets. And it's critical to make sure people know that they're not doing what they're doing for naught. Right. Their labor, their efforts don't go unnoticed. Mm-hmm. And so as collaborators, co-laborers with one another, we need to affirm one another as well. And as collaborators who work with Christ, we need to realize that he has affirmed and confirmed us. And so that's where I would, that's the points I would try to express to a group studying this quarterly.
So this is the end of Q3, right?
Yes.
So what's next after Q3? I know it will be Q4, but what will we be focusing on Q4?
The focus of quarterly 4 is the Great Commission. We focused a little bit on that here. We're talking about our calling, and now we're going to talk about that to which we're called. The main thing, the Great Commission, and there are several good lessons there. We will talk about evangelism and discipleship, but an emphasis on evangelism and certain ways to evangelize. The right kind of message and the right kind of attitude will be conveyed through those lessons when we do evangelize, and so stay tuned for that. You're not going to want to miss it. This is kind of the climax of a lot of work that went into these quarterlies, so it'll be great.
I like it. We're done. Now let me teach you another one. I
Okay.
tried to teach you last time. So, down.
That's mine. You stole that from me.
Oh, okay.
I created that one. We'll see you for quarterly 4 in a couple months. Work really hard to make these videos possible, and so I'm going to ask you to give. We need donations to keep these things going. They're great helps for the Sabbath School quarterlies, and as a 21st century vibrant church, we need to have videos, we need to be online, we need to reach people that way because we're in a technological age, and this is how you meet the needs of the people, doing things like this. So I am going to ask, even though I'm not governing over this and not a manager or anything, I'm just one of the grunts. I know how much this cost, and I encourage you to find some way to contribute, some kind of contribution, some kind of donation. It will really go a long way.